So I need to send a quick shout out to director Ryan Coogler, who is not only dedicated to keeping the theater experience alive, but he also recently spoke about Sinners, saying he wants people walking out of the theater and thinking, man, I had a full meal. They really care about the medium, which is actually a great way to describe this movie. There is a lot going on, maybe too much at times, but not enough to ruin the experience. It does not stop this film from being a unique experience that is clearly a love letter to great cinematic experiences of the past. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
Sinners follows twin brothers Smoke and Stack, who return to their Mississippi hometown to start a new life, only to discover that an even greater evil is waiting to welcome them back. Okay, so right off the bat, ever since I saw that first trailer, this has easily been one of my most anticipated movies of the year. Ryan Coogler is a very talented filmmaker. I've liked almost everything that he's been a part of outside of Wakanda Forever.
What are you doing? We don't do that here.
And I honestly really enjoyed seeing him take a big creative swing here and dip his toes into the horror genre. Something that big-name directors don't do a lot of, or enough of. And he does so in a way that I'm not entirely sure that I've ever seen done in the genre before. This movie was simultaneously a lot of what I expected and hoped for, and also not what I was expecting at all. I guess you could say that it subverted my expectations to a degree, but in a good way, not in a way that comes off like it's saying you to the fans. Because this is actually so much more than your average run-of-the-mill horror film. In fact, a large chunk of the beginning stages of this movie is specifically designed to introduce you to all of these characters in a way that makes the later stages of the film that much more effective.
I like it a lot.
The beginning of the film amounts to a lot of setup. We have these twin brothers returning home, they have a bit of a reputation, and they're trying to reestablish themselves. And they are basically assembling a team of past acquaintances to help them run this juke joint that they are just now opening up. And I really like the fact that the film takes its time to introduce you to everyone and set this situation up properly. They give a little bit of backstory for just about everyone, and it is refreshing to see Ryan Coogler and company put that kind of time and effort into building these characters. Michael B. Jordan plays twin brothers, each with their own distinct personalities and demeanor. Stack is a little bit more easygoing and carefree, while Smoke is the more serious one and strictly about his business. And I thought that Michael B. Jordan played both of them really well. Smoke in particular had such a troubling and heartbreaking backstory. In fact, that backstory very much plays into establishing the real heart of this film in the best way possible. And I have to say, as a father myself, I really connected with Smoke's story. You really get to understand why he is the way he is throughout the course of this film. Other standouts include Delroy Lindo as Slim, a drunken musician. And this is a character that not only contributes to the more dramatic moments in the film, he also contributes nicely to a lot of the comedic moments as well. Plus, it was just cool to see Delroy Lindo back on the big screen again. The man was like a staple character actor of the movies of the late 90s and early 2000s that I grew up with.
Stop eating my sesame cake! Bag of shit.
The other standout has to be newcomer Miles Canton as Sammy. This is in fact his first film role from what I understand, which makes his performance in it all the more impressive. He just brings so much to this film and his performance, specifically in the more musical scenes, which I understand he learned to play guitar just for this film. To be quite honest, I was kind of surprised how big of an influence music overall had on this film from start to finish. It's essentially the crucial plot point in the movie that drives the whole film forward. Imagine music so powerful that it pierces the barrier between life and death, between space and time. There was one scene in particular that really beat this idea home, and it was kind of an unconventional creative decision to show it in the way that they did, but I think it worked perfectly. It basically starts off as a performance by Sammy, but it kind of evolves into this scene that goes through the entire history and future of music. It was kind of wild to see all of these different eras of music co-mingling with each other. It created a really interesting visual. As far as the more horror elements of the film goes, I was really impressed with how they weaved established vampire lore in and out of the story of this film. How it basically uses what we know about vampires in the film in a bit more unconventional ways. Like the whole bit about vampires needing an invite in order to enter a domain. I've never really seen that piece of lore used in the way that it was used in this film. It is actually quite crucial to how things play out. There's another scene that uses garlic in a very clever way that honestly I don't know why anyone has never thought of it before. Maybe they have and I just haven't seen that movie. But it's pretty much the scene from John Carpenter's The Thing where they do the blood test to figure out who is human and who is not. And they kind of rework that into a scene testing to see who is a vampire and who isn't.
I know who I am. I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
While I'm on the subject, this movie does reference a lot of beloved films in the horror genre. The Thing being one. I also noticed The Shining based on how some shots were laid out. And the biggest influence, as far as I can tell, was From Dusk Till Dawn, a movie I happen to love. In fact, Sinners has a very similar narrative structure to that of From Dusk Till Dawn. Both from the perspective of a movie literally shifting gears halfway through and turning into a completely different movie, as well as just the whole idea of humans versus vampires in this self-contained location. The only difference being the concept is kind of flipped, and it's the vampires who are trying to get into the human establishment. I also like the fact that they left a lot up to the imagination when it comes to the vampire murder and mayhem. In fact, I noticed that a lot of the attacks actually happen off-screen. I think it leaves something up to the imagination, and it makes it even more jarring when you see this vampire horde slowly growing in numbers as the movie progresses. There were also a couple of moments throughout this film where the dialogue got surprisingly raunchy and X-rated, which does contribute to the overall message of the film as well as the title being Sinners. They also present an idea to a degree where the vampires are not the true villains of this world. Again, this is the 30s, so there is rampant racism and KKK groups running around everywhere. And yes, those things are addressed. And the vampires present themselves as a community that accepts everyone. And that's not to say that the vampires are presented as misunderstood or sympathetic villains in any way. I think the story just uses real-life social political issues people were dealing with at the time, and then has the vampire characters use those fears against the characters as a manipulation tactic, and again, I thought it was a pretty clever take.
That makes sense.
The ending of this film is very much designed to be a crowd pleaser of sorts, similar to the final shootout in Django Unchained. Now, it wasn't quite as iconic, and it was a little more tacked on in Sinners, but it was still effective. Also, the way that this movie addresses the concept of life after death was not only powerful, it was highly emotional. There is also a post-credit scene, or rather a mid-credit scene, that is probably the most effective post-credit scene that I've seen in a long time. It's not so much a tease of things to come, it's more of an emotional bookend to the story we just watched unfold. If I had to pick some things about this movie that I think they could have improved upon, my first instinct is to talk about the runtime. Now, I don't know where exactly, I'd probably have to watch it again to be sure, but I do feel like some fat could have been trimmed down off the 2 hour and 17 minute runtime. I just feel like we could have gotten to the same place if the movie was 10 or 15 minutes shorter. Maybe a nitpick, but I did find certain small moments throughout the film to be a tad bit unnecessary. Also, I did find the final confrontation between the humans and vampires to be a bit rushed and slightly anticlimactic. Bottom line, Sinners is a unique cinematic experience that does offer a lot of big ideas. It kind of takes the concepts presented in traditional vampire movies and flips them on their head in clever ways. I think there's no doubt in the talent involved based on how this story was crafted and executed for the most part. I did feel like that there was a little too much going on at times, which made parts of the film feel a little bit bloated, and I think that prevented me from absolutely loving this movie, but I did like it a hell of a lot. And that's why I'm going to give Sinners the pleased Palpatine.
Good. Good. Y'all be cool. Right on.